What's going on, everyone? It's Joe from Wraps Caps, and in today's video I just want to give a little update on where the mushroom farm stands so far, where Wraps Caps stands as far as a business. I've got some exciting updates going into winter 2021 and then spring 2022 that I'll also fill you in on. But I figured I'd also take today to just give you a tour of my urban mushroom farm, and that could help out people that might be looking to start their own hobby mushroom farm themselves, or maybe you're someone that's looking to get into a small scale grow or cultivation. But showing you kind of what I've done and the methods that I've used should help you get a quick start. Even if you're someone that's looking to start from home to do this on a small scale level, the techniques that I'm currently using to cultivate oyster mushrooms is something that anyone can do at their house for a hobby, or maybe you want to have a fun little event to do with your kids. It's an easy, really easy method to grow mushrooms, as the method that I'll show you here today. And yeah, so let's get started, y'all. Let's show you how this is all done. All right, great, everyone. So before I start giving a tour of my mushroom farm here and explain how I'm currently growing mushrooms, I wanted to just give a quick update on where the mushroom farm stands from a business perspective and what my plans are going forward into the 2022 season. So we are officially a registered business here, Wraps Caps Mushrooms. We are a mushroom farm here in Connecticut, in New England. So the business is officially up and running. It's officially registered. I do not have any customers yet. Right now, as you'll see, I'm just going through and refining and tweaking my actual fruiting chamber, my growing process. So I'm consistently pumping out about a few pounds of oyster mushrooms a week right now, but I'm really just keeping those and sharing them with friends and family as I really get this process nailed down. But my goals going into 2022 are to finish up the farm here, get this fruiting chamber and my whole process flowing where I can consistently grow. Ideally I would like to be growing anywhere from 20 pounds of mushrooms per week. And then starting from there, hopefully I can go ahead and network with a few local chefs in the area and maybe, go direct to the customer. I've been kind of investigating some other techniques, some different strategies for, trying to get mushrooms directly to the customers without having to go to like a farmer's market or anything like that. So if you're in the area, more to come into 2022 on actual mushroom sales. But yeah, like I said, so far we registered the business last year. I spent last fall into last winter starting to purchase all the equipment and collect all the tools that I would need. And then once we started this 2021 season at the beginning of this year, started to really assemble everything here and then started to really start fine-tuning the process. So here we are. It is the end of September in 2021, and I'm really happy to say that I am officially up and running. I've got all the infrastructure set up here in my farm, and we are growing mushrooms. So really excited, really good thing. Really happy to be finally doing this. All right, cool. So let's get started on the tour. And like I said, the process that I'm using right now to grow mushrooms is really low tech. It is the most basic way that you could get started growing mushrooms. The reason why I decided to start with the low tech method is that, quite honestly, I'm just getting started. So I didn't really see a need to spend a lot of money on some of the more expensive piece of equipment that I'll need in the future, such as like a bubbles barrel, sterilizer, also some other equipment that I need to make sure everything is sterile here on the farm. The method that I'm using right now is I'm growing oyster mushrooms off of straw. That's wheat straw. I buy it here from a local Agway store in town. So I'm able to go, I spend $12 on a bale of straw, and from that one bale of straw for $12, I'm able to grow several pounds of mushrooms over a period of several weeks. So it's really cool because it doesn't take a lot of effort and I don't have to spend a lot of money up front on equipment that I might need for other methods. But with this method, I really like it. It's really easy to start and I'm seeing success here on the farm. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take you outside where the process starts and I'll start explaining how I go through my entire growing process. So we'll go over pasteurization of my substrate, which is the straw. From there, we'll go over my incubation period where my substrate is colonizing with the mushroom mycelium. And then I'll also show you my fruiting chamber right behind me. And this is where all the magic happens. I'll show you how I set up my fruiting chamber, what I'm using right now for my humidity source, how I set up my exhaust fans, and yeah, it should be exciting. I just harvested mushrooms this morning, so I don't have any on inside the tent right now fruiting, but we might see some small pinheads in there, so that might be pretty cool. All right, y'all, let's get outside. All right, great, everyone. So this is phase one here at Wraps Caps. For those of you that are mushroom growers at home, you already know this, but for some of you that might be tuning in, maybe this is the first time you've ever heard how someone grows mushrooms. The first phase of the process is the sterilization of the substrate, or the pasteurization of the substrate in my case here. So many different substrates that you can grow oyster mushrooms off. I'm specifically just growing oyster mushrooms right here. You know, you could grow them off straw, which is the method that I'm using right now. You could also grow them off of hardwood pellets. A lot of people will use specific hardwood pellets that you might see at a local hardware store for things like your wood pellets, your fire stoves, your pellet stoves, that kind of thing. And there's also some other techniques that some people have used for different types of substrates. So again, the substrate is the growing medium. So this is what the mycelium, the mushroom mycelium, is going to use as food and start eating its way through the substrate and colonizing the substrate. Once the substrate is colonized, then the mushrooms will start fruiting out of that actual substrate. So you can see here, like I said, I'm going through a low-tech method right now for my process of growing. I'm using straw, wheat straw, as my substrate. So this bale was picked up at a local hardware store. Cost me $12 to purchase, really cheap, really effective. I am not supplementing my straw right now with anything. So I'm not adding any type of supplementation to it. I'm just using the straw itself. In the future, I would like to start supplementing, but with time and more education will come with those steps. And with that being said, you know, if you've got any tips on supplements that have worked for your growing process and you want to help me out, I'm obviously a learning cultivator here. I'm an amateur, so I would appreciate any comments that you guys have. Definitely leave them in the descriptions and tell me what has worked for you. But this is step one. So step one is we go out and we get our straw. All right, perfect, everyone. So now that I've purchased my straw, you know, I use my little back deck area out here. If you're doing this from home, you're going to want to be outdoors for this part of the actual process. But once we get our straw, the straw itself in the bale, the bushel that it comes in, it's long pieces of the straw. So before we actually pasteurize the straw or make it clean, we need to chop it up into smaller pieces. So what I'm doing here at my house, since I don't really have much equipment to start, is quite simply, I'm just spreading the straw out on the grass and then I'm running over it with my lawnmower. And by doing that, what my lawnmower is doing is it's chopping up the straw into about 1 to 2 inch pieces of straw. So ideally you're chopping your straw up into smaller pieces. Other techniques that some people have used is, you know, if you have a garbage pail, you can put your straw inside the garbage pail, and then you can take a weed whacker, and then you can, you know, weed whack the straw inside, weed whacker, edge trimmer, whatever you call it, but you can weed whack your straw inside the bucket, and that will chop it up into finer pieces. So our next step here, the goal is to actually chop that straw up into fine pieces. All right, perfect. So now our straw is all chopped up. What I do again is I just lay it out on the grass, I cut it all up. The next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna actually pasteurize the straw. So this process, what we're looking to do is really clean our substrate. We wanna make sure that that substrate is sterile so that our mushroom mycelium won't have any contamination or it won't be competing to colonize the substrate. So we wanna create a really clean environment for our mushroom mycelium, our mushroom spawn, before we go ahead and introduce it into our straw substrate. And to do that, like I said, I'm using a very low-tech method here. Really all I'm doing is I'm taking a 50-gallon drum barrel, and I have a garbage pail here. And what I've done is I have cut holes. I've drilled 1/2-inch holes inside this garbage pail. And this is where I'll go ahead and take my chopped up straw and I'll go ahead and dump it in this garbage pail. And then what I'll do is I will fill this 55-gallon barrel up with water. I will add some of my lime powder. Lime powder is the additive that I'm using for my pasteurization. It's called a cold water pasteurization method. So the idea here is that the lime powder inside the water is going to raise the pH to a higher level, higher pH level, so it becomes more alkaline. And when there's an extremely high pH and the water's alkaline, the bacteria and the contamination in the straw won't be able to survive. So what this idea is that by soaking it for anywhere from you know, I'm giving this on average up to 24 hours. I'm going about 18 hours typically. So you want to be around that 24-hour mark. You could be anywhere, I believe, from 12 to 24 hours. I will make sure that I leave that in the description. But what we're doing is we're just soaking our straw overnight in here in this lime bath, and that raises the pH in the water. So by the end of this process, our straw is going to be nice and clean and ready to be introduced to the mushroom mycelium. All right, so once my straw has been soaking for just under 24 hours, around 18 hours in my lime powder bath, my cold water bath, what I do is I will go ahead and take this bucket out, and then we're going to let this bucket drain. I'm going to let all that soft, wet straw drain anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. When I squeeze that straw, what I'm looking for is not a lot of water that's dripping out, but also I'm not looking for it to be dry. I want it to be nice and moist so that when I squeeze it really hard, maybe there's just a little trickle of water that comes out. So once we have finished our pasteurization process and our straw has drip dried for about 4 hours, then comes a time to go ahead and pack our bags with the straw, and then we actually introduce the mushroom spawn at this point. All right, so when we get ready to actually introduce our spawn to our substrate, the materials that I'm using to pack the straw and the actual materials that I'm using to grow the mushrooms, originally I started out with polytubing bagging, right? So I just cut off a small sheet here. I went to uline.com and I got this really long roll of polytubing bagging. I'll make sure I leave the size of this in the description, but I think lie flat it's around 1 foot long. I'll figure out the diameters to show you. And what I was doing with these straw bags, which you'll see in the fruiting chamber, is I'm really mimicking the growing environment that mushrooms would have, oyster mushrooms would have in nature. And that is, they grow in trees. So if you've ever been walking through the woods, you might have seen oyster mushrooms growing off of trees. So with these polytubing baggings, I'm able to stuff the straw in these and create a really long cylinder column of straw. And what I'm doing is I'm recreating a tree trunk, and that's exactly how oyster mushrooms grow in nature. Now, you're gonna see the polytubing bag in my fruiting chamber here, but I just recently, as of this last grow, I've been trying a new method by growing out of buckets. The reason why I'm trying out of the buckets is because, of course, here at Wraps Caps, I'm trying to be as sustainable as possible, and we're trying to reduce and eliminate as much waste as possible. The mushroom spawn that I purchased that you're gonna see in a minute is 100% organic. I'm growing on organic straw. So for me, if I can figure out a way to grow these mushrooms and not have to throw away plastic bags every time, that's a big win for us. So with the buckets, it's a really cool solution to that because these are totally reusable. So what I've done here is I've just taken a regular 5-gallon bucket here, and this one was purchased from Lowe's, just a home improvement store near me. And what I've done is I've drilled 1/2-inch holes all the way around this bucket. All the way around this bucket, I've drilled 1/2-inch holes. And what I'm doing is I'm packing the straw now inside these buckets instead of the actual poly bags. And the idea here is that by packing your straw and your mushroom spawn is that the straw will colonize inside this bucket now instead of the bags, and my mushrooms will start fruiting outside of these little holes here. So the last thing we have to talk about before we talk about actually packing these bags, of course, is the mushroom spawn. So spawn is really just the name for a growing medium that's already been grown out with the mushroom spore. So this white stuff here is called mycelium. So mycelium is the actual organism of the mushroom. The mycelium is the living, breathing, growing part of the mushroom. What mushrooms actually are is the fruiting body of the mycelium. So your mycelium is just like your tomato plant, the plant itself, the physical plant that's growing out of the ground, whereas your tomatoes are just like your mushrooms. So the tomatoes are the fruit body of the tomato plant, mushrooms are the fruit body of the white mycelium right here. So it is a goal of mine to be growing my own mushroom spawn here at home, but again, I'm just starting out, don't have a lot of money or equipment, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just purchasing my spawn online. Right now I am getting it from website that I'll leave in the description. These are 4-pound bags, I believe. And this one right here is a white oyster mushroom. So I'm just purchasing these in the mail. I'm storing them in the refrigerator if I can't use them right away. But this is berry spawn, so these grow on rye grain berries. And this is what I use to sprinkle inside my buckets as I'm stuffing in my pasteurized straw. So what I do is I go layer by layer, I add some straw, I'll sprinkle in some spawn. I'll add some straw, I sprinkle in some spawn. And I do that until the bucket's filled. Once that bucket's filled, it gets capped up, and then it heads off into the next phase in incubation. I'll see you inside. So the last thing that I want to mention about the lime powder, if you are buying lime powder and you're going to do a cold water pasteurization method like I do here, you want to make sure that that lime powder is low in magnesium. You should know when you purchase the bag itself, you're looking for it to be low in magnesium, and I'll go ahead and share a screenshot of the actual ingredients in this particular lime powder that I purchased so you can see it and compare it to what you're purchasing at home. All right, cool everyone. Welcome back inside in the farm here. And this next phase, once we've gone ahead and we've pasteurized the substrate and the straw, and I've added in the mushroom spawn, we need to let these sit for about 2 to 3 weeks. That's depending on the temperature down here in my basement. This is an urban mushroom farm. I am doing this from home right now in the basement. So, anyone can do this from anywhere really. Now, my goal ideally is that I would be building a separate section of my basement here for the incubation period. So we want to try to keep the temperature and the humidity at certain points to introduce these buckets to the proper growing conditions. So our mycelium, our mushroom mycelium, is at the right temperature, the right humidity, and it can grow through all of that straw really quick and easily. But right now I'm just starting out again, so what I've done is I'm just placing these in a corner of the basement that has the proper temperature, and I'm letting them sit for about 2 to 3 weeks. Once these buckets become fully white and colonized, the straw has the mycelium, it's growing all the way through it, and I notice that there's some pinheads that start forming in the holes. That tells me that it's the right time to introduce it into my fruiting chamber, which is right here to the left of me, and then I should start to see the mushrooms fruiting and growing within about a week's time. So let's take a look at the fruiting chamber. Okay, so here is my fruiting chamber in my basement. So the strategy that I went with was to purchase a 5x10 hydroponic grow tent and to use this as my fruiting chamber to grow mushrooms, to fruit the mushrooms in. What I'm using here as my source of humidity is a DIY. I built this myself. It is a fogging machine or a humidifier essentially, and all I've really done here is I've added a fan that is blowing air into a bucket filled with water. Inside that bucket I have a pond fogger, so I'll open it right now because it's on. So I've got a nice pond fogger in there. I'll leave the equipment in the descriptions. That is a House of Hydro pond fogger. So the idea is that the pond fogger is taking the water and it's making that water into very fine mist, a foggy mist. This fan is blowing air inside the reservoir, and then it's blowing the fog up my escape valve and into my tent. And as you can see right now, I've actually got it running. So right now inside this fruiting chamber, you're gonna see straw bags there. Those are my fully colonized straw bags. But this fog is blowing in and it's keeping this tent at humidity at or just above 90% humidity right now. Another thing that I've done is I have included a humidity sensor. So this is an Inkbird humidity sensor, so that once the humidity goes above my predetermined level, so for example I have it set to 93% humidity, once it goes above 96% humidity, it kicks on my exhaust fan that's inside the tent, and once it goes below 90% humidity, it turns on my humidifier, which you just saw there. Now the light sources that I'm using, I'll leave these, but they're just LED strips. I have these LED strips on timers here. So all they are is they're plugged right into an outlet timer, and I run these 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So my mushrooms are getting 12 hours of light a day and 12 hours of darkness a day. And that is a method that I found that has been really good for my growing conditions. So let's go on inside the tent. All right, great, y'all. So here we are. We're inside the fruiting chamber. We're inside the tent. A few more things I want to show you is my exhaust fan. So like I mentioned, I have airflow coming in the tent from my DIY fogging system. That's providing my source of humidity. And then I've also got my exhaust fan in here. So when it gets too humid in this room, my sensor will pick it up. It'll turn on my exhaust fan, and this blows air outside of my house. And all I've done is I've re-outfitted one of my basement windows to allow for a dryer vent to blow air out that's attached to this pipe and this tubing here. Like I said before, mushrooms, they need the right temperature, right light, right humidity, and they need the right flow of oxygen. So this is kind of a method that I'm using now to get my oxygen flowing in, to also provide the right humidity. I also have thermostats and also humidity gauges inside the tent, so I can monitor the humidity and the temperature all the time and try to actually narrow that in as best as possible. And actually, you'll see right here, so we do have some mushrooms that are fruiting. So these are Italian oyster mushrooms, and these bags have been in here for about a month now. So this bag is on its third flush for oysters, and they're about to be done. So these bags get 3 flushes each. I hang them up on here on little hooks, and they'll fruit after about a week. And then once they fruit once, I can harvest the mushrooms, and then they will fruit one more time from there. Once I'm done with these bags, I can either compost them, or I can try to find some locals that want to purchase them as mushroom compost. So always trying to reuse all of our waste here, trying to create as much of a self-sustainable process as possible. Now, another cool thing that I did inside this tent is, my buddy Jared and I, thank you Jared, shout out, he actually helped me build this tent on a base floor. So you might have noticed from the last the videos outside the tent is that we're actually raised about a foot off the floor on a wood frame. And what we've done is we've made a sub pump bucket. So the actual floor of my fruiting chamber is tilted to go back to this corner, and that just helps me when I need to do things like clean and maintenance once a week. I can come in here and I can spray water off, and I can just scrape the water into this sub pump bucket. And then I've got a hose that's attached here, and I can run a sub pump and pump all the water outside this hose, and it goes outside the same window that this exhaust fan is going on. And that's actually kicking on right now. I'll go run outside and show you what this looks like while it's on from the outside. All right, everyone, so here we are. We're on the other side of my basement window. And as you can see here, my exhaust fan is currently on for inside my fruiting chamber. And all I did is I just made a nice wood frame that fit over that window. And then I attached this dryer vent to my exhaust hosing that's from inside the tent. So this air that you see flowing out here is from inside the fruiting chamber. The reason I did this method is because when the fan isn't blowing, these flaps will be shut. So it's a nice way to keep any of the bugs or animals out of here. And then this is the same hose that you saw inside the tent that's used for when I need to do cleaning and maintenance. I can pump all of my water and all of my waste fluids outside the house this way instead of having to use a dry vac or anything like that. All right, y'all, so that's really it. That's like a view of my setup here. Some things I didn't include in that tutorial or that walkthrough was, my growing parameters as far as my humidity source. I'm still trying to dial that in. For example, my tent right now has been around 71 degrees Fahrenheit all summer. The basement does keep a nice cool environment, and I expect over the winter time it'll drop down to maybe the mid 60s. Ideally, I would have the temperature, around 68, around 65. So still trying to tweak some stuff for the inside of the tent to make sure that temperature is lower. But I'm able to get my humidity right on point, and I'm pretty happy with the parameters that I have right now for the humidity source. But that's pretty much it. So the goal from here is to keep amping up my production inside this tent, keep learning through this process. Again, if anyone has any recommendations, I am new at this. I am looking to learn more and more. I've been, seriously studying and researching mushrooms for about 3 years now, but I've only been learning how to cultivate for around 1.5 to 2 years. But that's really it. So this is it here. You can follow my YouTube channel. I am switching the YouTube channel from my Wraps Mushroom Farm channel to now my personal branded channel. It'll be under the Wraps Caps playlist, so you can find us there. You can subscribe to our email list. I'm on Twitter and I'm also on Facebook. We have a website as well, wrapscaps.com, and you can go there if you want to purchase merch, for example, hats like this one, or also some of our t-shirts. Anything that you guys support us with helps provide support for the farm here, but we also do donate some of the proceeds to foundations that help with the honeybee preservation right now. So really appreciate it, everyone. Thank you so much. I had a great time showing you the farm today. I'm really excited to bring you along as I continue this journey and I continue to build out the farm more and grow more mushrooms. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video.